President Trump announces plans to ban large institutional investors from buying up single-family homes in the U.S. Following the capture of Nicolás Maduro, Venezuelan socialist soldiers arrest citizens for celebrating the dictator's downfall. U.S. forces seize a Russian-flagged tanker in the North Atlantic with support from the British military. And a Democratic state senator tears down PragerU's Founders Museum exhibit inside the Nebraska Capitol. We'll get into all that and your quick hits right now. What's up, guys? Welcome to the wrap-up, where we break down the biggest stories of the week that you might have missed but definitely need to know. I'm your host, Selena. First up, President Donald Trump announced on Wednesday that his administration is moving to ban major investors from buying up single-family homes in the U.S. in an effort to lower housing prices. Market Screener reported that Blackstone, a major global asset manager, saw its stock slide 7.3% during early Wednesday afternoon following the announcement. Blackstone was the largest private equity apartment owner in the U.S. last year, with over 230,000 units, according to a report by the Private Equity Stakeholder Project. The latest numbers show that large investors as a whole purchased more than 345,000 U.S. homes in just one quarter of last year, accounting for approximately 33% of all home purchases that quarter, and notably in areas hit by wildfires last year in Los Angeles County, California. Investors are buying up about 40% of properties as homeowners are increasingly unable to afford to rebuild. Posting on Truth Social, President Trump said that the, quote, American dream has become increasingly out of reach for far too many people. Under the previous White House administration, inflation reached record highs, peaking at 9.1% in July 2022. And many American households also reportedly faced surging home prices during that time. However, recent trends have shown a decline in prices. According to the National Association of Realtors data, the average price of a single-family home in the U.S. decreased to $409,200 in November 2025, down from $414,900 the month prior. In our next story, following the U.S. capture of Nicolás Maduro, the Venezuelan socialist regime is now arresting Venezuelans who celebrate the dictator's downfall. Breitbart reported that the now acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, declared a state of emergency. Article 5 of the declaration mandates that national, state, and municipal police immediately search for and arrest anyone who promoted or supported the U.S. armed attack against the territory. In Mérida, state police announced on Instagram this week the arrest of 2 unidentified men for celebrating Maduro's capture. Other detentions have been reported in the states of Vargas, Miranda, and Bolivar, carried out by armed civilians who are not identified as members of any state security force. The Spanish newspaper El Periódico reported that Venezuelans are trying to stay home as long as possible for the fear of the Colectivos mobilization. PragerU personality Franklin Camargo was born in Venezuela and experienced the dangers of socialism firsthand. Appearing on Stories of Us, Franklin described how he was expelled from school for opposing socialist policies.
This professor, he was mentioning that Venezuelans who had escaped the country to try to find a better future in other places are stupid. So I felt really angry about what he was saying, and I wanted to debate. And because there isn't any type of opportunity to succeed in a socialist country. They expelled me from college. They said that I was a terrorist and that if I don't leave right now, they would call the National Guard.
You can watch Franklin's full episode of Stories of Us at PragerU.com. Up next, U.S. forces successfully boarded and seized a rogue Russian-flagged oil tanker in the North Atlantic. As part of an ongoing effort to enforce sanctions and curb illicit oil trade tied to hostile regimes. Breitbart reported that the ship had been pursued for more than 2 weeks after evading earlier interception attempts near Venezuela and attempting to run a U.S. blockade. The UK Ministry of Defense says it supported U.S. efforts to seize the Russian flag tanker, including with Royal Air Force aircraft. UK Defense Secretary John Healey told the BBC, quote, "This ship with a nefarious history is part of a Russian-Iranian axis of sanctions evasion, which is fueling terrorism." Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem highlighted that the seizure was one of 2 U.S. military-coordinated pre-dawn actions that day, focused on enforcing its laws against, quote, "ghost fleet tankers." Next up, security footage from earlier this week shows that a Nebraska senator tore down paintings from PragerU's Founder Museum that were on display in the Nebraska Capitol. Omaha Representative Michaela Cavanaugh was caught on camera tearing down framed posters outside her office, arguing that senators are prohibited from placing items on the walls, despite Nebraska code allowing short-term displays in the Capitol. In partnership with the White House, PragerU created the Founders Museum, featuring interactive paintings paired with biographical videos of the men and women who helped shape America. The exhibits are featured on the White House grounds, as well as in schools, state capitals, and various venues across the nation, as part of America's 250th celebration. Nebraska's Governor Jim Pillen called out Cavanaugh's actions, posting on X, quote, "Celebrating America during our 250th year should be a moment of unity and patriotism, not divisiveness and destructive partisanship." Pillens later announced that, quote, "Every historical portrait that was shamefully ripped down was immediately put back up yesterday afternoon." The Founders Museum exhibit will remain on display during public building hours through the summer of this year. And if you want to watch the video spotlighting the men and women who risked everything for liberty, visit PragerU.com. And now it's time for Quick Hits. Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced a new food pyramid with the main message of eat real food, something you wouldn't imagine as controversial. But of course, leftists are suddenly on the side of ultra-processed foods. Following weeks of scrutiny after journalist Nick Shirley featured the center in a video on Somali daycare fraud in Minnesota, the Quality Learning Center has officially closed. New York City mayoral aide C. Weaver, who had said it's racist for white people to own homes, burst into tears and ran inside when a journalist asked her about her mother owning a $1.4 million home. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting voted Monday to dissolve itself after Congress rescinded $1.1 billion in federal funding, cutting out the primary government revenue stream that has long supported NPR and PBS. And Hilton cut ties with an independently owned Hampton Inn in Lakeville, Minnesota, after the franchise implemented and then tried to hide a policy that banned federal immigration agents from staying on the property. That's a wrap for this week. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us what you thought about these stories. And we'll see you back here next week on The Wrap Up. Thank you so much for watching this video. In order to keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation today.